Welcome back to The Explainer. Today, we're tackling a crucial yet totally misunderstood piece of information security compliance. We're going to completely demystify Clause 4.3 of ISO 27001. We're taking that dry, boring compliance text and turning it into a visual, practical blueprint so you are audit ready. If you've ever found yourself scratching your head wondering exactly where your information security management system starts and stops, well, you're absolutely in the right place. Let's get those boundaries drawn before an auditor does it for you.
Okay, here's our roadmap for today. First, the foundation, looking at clauses 4.1 and 4.2. Then, drawing boundaries. Next, mandatory documentation. After that, scope-defining controls. And finally, audit readiness.
Let's jump right into Part 1, the foundation, covering clauses 4.1 and 4.2.
Look, before you can draw a box around your ISMS, you have to actually know what landscape that box is sitting in. Step 1 is Clause 4.1, which is all about understanding your organization's context. What internal and external issues impact your security goals? Are there crazy new privacy laws in your region? Are you suddenly dealing with a massive remote workforce? Then you hit Step 2, Clause 4.2. This is where you identify your interested parties and figure out what they actually need. Who cares about your security? We're talking customers, regulators, partners, maybe your board of directors. You've got to know what they expect before you even think about defining what your ISMS covers.
Fine, moving on to Part 2, drawing boundaries with Clause 4.3.
So here's the thing. Your scope is not just some arbitrary line you draw in the sand. ISO 27001 explicitly tells us there are 3 things you absolutely must consider. First, those issues from 4.1. Second, the requirements from 4.2. But the third point? This is where it gets super interesting. It's all about the interfaces and dependencies between what you do and what other organizations do. Think of your ISMS like a fortress. Those interfaces and dependencies, they're the drawbridges, the supply lines, maybe a shared wall with the castle next door. You have to nail down exactly where your control ends and the next organization's control begins. Let's make this real for a second. Imagine you're sitting in an audit right now. The auditor is going to look at that third point and ask you point blank, how do your activities interface with external organizations? Do you share a network with the parent company? Are you relying on a third-party data center? What about a vendor with remote access to your servers? If you haven't mapped these out, your scope is literally full of invisible holes.
That brings us to Part 3, mandatory documentation.
Okay, here is the ultimate mandate right from the standard. The scope shall be available as documented information. Listen, your scope cannot just live in the IT director's head. It can't just be some vague understanding floating around the team. It has to be physically codified. An auditor isn't going to just take your word for it, right? They thrive on paperwork. So this could be a formal scope statement, a slick network diagram showing logical boundaries, or even a floor plan detailing physical perimeters. But the bottom line, if it isn't documented, in the eyes of the standard, it simply does not exist.
Put yourself in the hot seat again for this ultimate auditor check. If I were the auditor sitting across from you right now and I asked to see your scope, your answer needs to be a very confident yes, and you need to be ready to hand over a physical or digital document right then and there. It should clearly define the organizational parts, physical locations, and information systems included in your ISMS. If you're scrambling to compile it on the spot, you're already starting the audit off on the totally wrong foot.
Let's keep moving to Part 4, scope-defining controls.
To actually enforce your scope, you need real, tangible physical perimeters working right alongside your digital logical boundaries. Let's look at Clause 7.1 from the Annex A controls first. This mandates physical security perimeters. So if your headquarters is in scope, how are you physically securing the areas holding your sensitive assets? Think keycard access, secure doors, visitor logs, the whole shebang. On the flip side, we have Clause 8.22, which covers the segregation of networks. Because let's face it, in the modern era, your scope is mostly digital. How are you logically dividing your ISMS from out-of-scope networks? Are you using firewalls, VLANs, and strict routing controls so some random person on the guest Wi-Fi can't just hop into the server holding your critical data? Both the physical walls and the logical walls have to be airtight.
But watch out, because here's a massive pitfall. Your carefully drawn, perfectly documented borders, they can be breached in a heartbeat if you ignore external risks. You could literally have the best physical perimeters and network segregation on the planet, but if you hand the keys over to an external vendor without any oversight, your boundary is totally compromised.
And because of that exact risk, we have to talk about Clause 519. You gotta define processes to manage the risks that come with supplier access. This ensures your scope boundaries stay fortified even when third parties are poking around your systems. The standard actually states you must define and implement rules for how supplier personnel use your assets and exactly map out what IT infrastructure they can monitor, control, or use. Seriously, if an external logistics company integrates with your database, that interface is a critical point on your boundary. You absolutely must have agreements that force them to uphold your security requirements.
Finally, Part 5, Audit Readiness.
An unmanageable, vaguely defined, or undocumented scope is pretty much an auditor's absolute favorite target. It's the loose thread that, if pulled, unravels your entire information security management system. Remember, drawing this box isn't just about passing some test. It's about knowing exactly what you're protecting, why you're protecting it, and where your actual responsibilities lie. So leave this explainer asking yourself, if an auditor walked into your office tomorrow and started pulling the thread on your scope, would the whole system unravel, or would your fortress hold strong? Thanks for hanging out with me for this explainer, and good luck fortifying those boundaries.